poor nurse spent her last $5 on coffee, unaware her blind date was a Café CO. The afternoon sun streamed through the wide windows of Harborview Café, scattering golden light across rustic wooden tables and shelves stacked with jars of coffee beans. The air was thick with the aroma of espresso and warm pastries, mingling with the low hum of conversation from regulars who had claimed their favorite spots. Some typed furiously on laptops. Others sipped slowly at cappuccinos while gossiping in hushed tones. For many, Harborview was just another stop in their day. But for Clara Hayes, it felt like a stage she hadn't chosen to stand on. At 29, Clara had reluctantly agreed to a blind date arranged by her best friend, who insisted she had spent too long hiding behind her work. Clara was a pediatric nurse, and though she loved her patients deeply, the 12-hour shifts had taken a toll. Her life had become a cycle of scrubs, exhaustion, and late-night bus rides home. She sat at a corner table, fidgeting with her phone, her thumb flicking across the screen for the 10th time in just as many minutes. She felt out of place among the sharply dressed professionals in tailored suits and silk blouses. Her light blue scrubs were covered by a cardigan she had thrown on in a rush, her chestnut hair pulled back into a bun that was already loosening. Her face carried the fatigue of someone who had been awake far too long, but her eyes, warm, steady hazel, betrayed resilience. Clara glanced at the chalkboard menu, her stomach sinking as her eyes locked on the prices. Rent had drained her account earlier in the week, and her student loan payment had been deducted yesterday. What remained in her checking account was a painfully precise $5.37, barely enough to buy the cheapest coffee on the board. She let out a quiet sigh. The logical part of her brain had wanted to cancel the date when she realized her financial situation, but her best friend had been so excited. Clara didn't have the heart to back out. Instead, she had resolved to stretch a single small coffee as long as necessary in hope that her date wasn't the type to suggest ordering dinner afterward. What Clara didn't know was that someone had been watching her since she arrived, not with judgment, but with quiet curiosity. Standing near the counter, clipboard in hand, was Lucas Grant, 33 years old and owner of Harborview Café, along with 2 other coffee houses in the city. He preferred hands-on management, showing up unannounced a few times a week to check in with staff, sample pastries, and quietly observe the customers who gave his shops their soul. Lucas had noticed Clara the second she walked in. Unlike the sleep professionals who typically fill the cafe, she looked like someone who had just survived a battlefield of fatigue. Her scrubs, her hunched posture, her careful study of the menu, everything about her spoke of a person running on empty. When Clara finally approached the counter, Lucas found himself moving to take her order personally, something he rarely did anymore. "Hi, welcome to Harborview," he said with a warm smile. "What can I get for you today?" Clara hesitated, her polite smile not quite reaching her tired eyes. "Just a regular coffee, please. The small." Lucas rang it up, but his eyes caught the way Clara pulled a tiny coin purse from her bag. She counted out exact change, 3 quarters, a few dimes, and a couple of crumpled ones, before carefully sliding $4.50 across the counter. It wasn't convenience. It was necessity. "That would be $4.50. Lucas confirmed gently, taking the money. As he poured her coffee, he added, "We're testing a new pastry recipe today. Cinnamon rolls. Could you help us out by giving one a try? Feedback would mean a lot." Clara blinked in surprise. "It's complimentary?" "Exactly," Lucas assured her. "You'd be doing us a favor." For a moment, Clara looked conflicted. She didn't want to seem like someone eager to take advantage of free food, but the hunger gnawing at her stomach won, and she finally nodded with gratitude. "Thank you." Lucas slid the warm cinnamon roll across the counter and studied her. "Long day?" he asked, gesturing toward her scrubs. Clara let out a soft laugh. 12-hour shift at St. Mary's. Pediatric oncology. Lucas stilled. He had expected office job, or maybe school teacher. But pediatric oncology? His chest tightened with respect. "That must be difficult," he said quietly. "It's exhausting," Clara admitted, "but worth it. Those kids, they're braver than most adults I've ever met. They teach me something new about resilience every day." Lucas opened his mouth to respond, but Clara's phone buzzed against the counter. She glanced at the screen, her face falling as she read the message. Bad news? Lucas asked, his tone filled with concern. Clara hesitated, then exhaled. I was supposed to meet someone for a blind date. He just canceled. She tried to shrug it off, but her voice wavered. Apparently, he looked me up on social media and decided a nurse wasn't successful enough for him. Anger sparked hot in Lucas's chest. The casual cruelty. The arrogance. Then he's a fool, Lucas said, his voice firm. And you just dodged a bullet. Clara blinked at him, then smiled for the first time since she had walked in. A real smile, one that reached her eyes. Thank you. Honestly, I'm relieved. I was dreading trying to cover the bill. I only have $5 until payday tomorrow, and she trailed off, embarrassed by her own honesty. But Lucas wasn't disgusted or pitying. He felt admiration. Most people in his world spent half their energy trying to look wealthier than they were. But here was someone admitting her struggles openly. Can I be honest with you too? Lucas asked, surprising even himself. Clara tilted her head. Go on. I own this cafe, he said simply. I was here checking on operations when you walked in. I don't usually step behind the counter anymore, but something about the way you looked at that menu, it caught my attention. When you counted out exact change for coffee, I realized you weren't pretending. You were being real. And honestly, that's rare. Clara's eyes widened. You're the owner of this place, of this one and two others in the city? Lucas admitted. Then he smiled sheepishly. And I'm terrible at dating because I hate all the performance. I'd rather have a real conversation with someone who isn't trying to impress me. Clara laughed softly. So you're saying I should feel complimented for being broke and exhausted in scrubs? Exactly, Lucas said firmly, because it means you're real. You care about your work, and you're not pretending to be something you're not. She studied him, unsure if this was kindness or something deeper. Why would you want to spend time with someone who's clearly struggling financially? You're successful. You could date anyone. Lucas leaned against the counter, his expression thoughtful. My dad was a firefighter. My mom, a schoolteacher. We never had much money growing up, but they taught me that worth isn't tied to a bank account. I built this business from scratch, working night shifts in a grocery store, studying coffee roasting on the side. I know what it feels like to have nothing, and I also know that success means nothing if you forget what really matters. Clara's throat tightened. She looked down at her hands. I should be honest, too, then. I'm not just broke today. I have crushing student loans from nursing school. I send money to help my parents. I'll probably never be wealthy. If you're looking for someone who can keep up with an expensive lifestyle, that's not me. Lucas's gaze softened. Clara, I'm looking for someone who knows what matters. Someone who puts their heart into what they do. And from where I'm standing, you're exactly that person. 6 months later, what began as a cinnamon roll and a conversation blossomed into something neither Clara nor Lucas expected. Their dates weren't flashy. They walked by the river, cooked simple dinners together, watched old movies on Clara's couch. But beneath the quiet simplicity grew trust, laughter, and deep admiration. Lucas helped Clara refinance her student loans, connecting her with a financial advisor he trusted. And together, they began working on a project close to his heart. A nonprofit cafe that would employ teenagers aging out of foster care, giving them training, stable income, and hope. Clara's practical knowledge of tight budgets and her empathy made her indispensable. She reminded Lucas that charity wasn't about looking good in press releases, but about changing lives. For Clara, Lucas represented something she had almost given up on, a partner who valued her heart more than her wallet. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Lucas brought Clara back to Harborview Café. The same golden light streamed to the windows, the same warm hum of conversation filling the space. But this time, Lucas guided her to the exact corner table where she had sat, exhausted, counting her last $5. Clara, he began softly, taking her hands. A year ago, you walked in here with nothing but $5 in your purse, wearing scrubs after a 12-hour shift. You thought you had nothing to offer, but you gave me honesty, and that changed my life. Her breath caught, as he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I'm not asking you to marry money or success or the owner of 3 coffee shops. I'm asking you to marry the man who saw you at your lowest and recognized your worth had nothing to do with your bank account." Claire's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of joy. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "1,000 times, yes." And in that cafe, where a nurse once spent her last $5 on a cup of coffee, a new chapter began. Proof that sometimes the moments we feel poorest are the very moments that lead us to our richest blessings. Because true love, they both learned, isn't about wealth or appearances. It's about seeing someone's heart and choosing it over and over again,